December 18th, 1944. 0400 hours. The Ardennes Forest, Belgium. Generalleutnant Fritz Bayerlein commanded the Panzer-Lehr Division, one of Germany's most elite armored formations. His intelligence officer had just handed him captured documents from the American 101st Airborne Division at Bastogne. Bayerlein read the unit roster. Then he turned to his staff and said something that would be recorded in division logs. "We are not fighting the British here." He did not mean it as a compliment to his enemy. He meant it as a warning to his own men. By 1944, Wehrmacht commanders had developed a clear hierarchy of fear when facing Allied infantry. They respected the Canadians. They cautiously engaged the British. They sometimes mocked the French. But American rifle companies terrified them in ways no other Allied formation did. And yet the Americans entered the war with the smallest standing army of any major power, had never fought a European land campaign, and initially suffered humiliating defeats in North Africa. This is the story of why German soldiers learned to fear the American infantrymen more than any other opponent on the Western Front. The standard American infantry division in World War II contained 14,253 men. This was smaller than a British division at 18,000, and smaller than a German Volksgrenadier division at 15,000. But the American Rifle Squad was structured differently than any other army in the war. A British section numbered 10 men, built around a single Bren light machine gun. A German group numbered 10 men, built around an MG-42 machine gun. An American squad numbered 12 men, built around 3 separate automatic weapons: 1 Browning automatic rifle and 2 M1 Garand semi-automatic rifles in the hands of every rifleman. The firepower difference was not subtle. A German squad could deliver approximately 40 rounds per minute of sustained automatic fire from its MG-42. A British section could deliver roughly 20 rounds per minute from its Bren gun. An American squad could deliver 110 rounds per minute from combined BAR and Garand fire, spread across the entire squad formation instead of concentrated in a single gun team. Every American rifleman carried a semi-automatic weapon capable of aimed fire without manual bolt operation. British, German, and Soviet infantrymen still carried bolt-action rifles as their primary weapon throughout the war. This meant an American private could fire 8 rounds as fast as he could pull the trigger, reload in 3 seconds, and resume fire. His British counterpart had to manually cycle his bolt after every shot. The German term for encountering an American rifle squad in combat was Feuerwalze, rolling wall of fire. But firepower meant nothing without ammunition. And here the Americans demonstrated an advantage that no other Allied nation could match. In 1944, American industry produced 41 billion rounds of small arms ammunition. Germany produced 6 billion rounds that same year. Britain produced 3 billion rounds. An American infantry division in active combat consumed approximately 500,000 rounds of rifle and machine gun ammunition per week. U.S. Army logistics delivered this ammunition to frontline units with a consistency that German commanders found incomprehensible. Oberst Helmut Rittgen, who fought American forces in France, later wrote, "We calculated ammunition expenditure by the round. They calculated it by the ton." American trucks delivered ammunition directly to battalion supply points 6 to 8 times per day during active operations. German units relied on horse-drawn wagons that made deliveries once per day, if supply lines remained intact. British units received ammunition through a centralized depot system that required 3 to 4 days processing time between requisition and delivery. American forward observers could call for artillery support and receive fire missions within 6 minutes. British forward observers waited an average of 22 minutes. German forward observers waited 30 to 40 minutes, when artillery support existed at all. By late 1944, American divisions had access to 72,000 artillery shells per day. German divisions had access to 2,000 shells per day. A Wehrmacht after-action report from the Hürtgen Forest stated, "The American infantry does not attack. It explodes forward on a wave of steel and fire." The man who shaped American infantry doctrine was General Lesley James McNair. McNair commanded Army ground forces from 1941 until his death in Normandy in 1944. He rejected the European model of infantry as a holding force designed to support armor and artillery. Instead, McNair designed American infantry to function as a self-contained system of overwhelming violence. His doctrine had three core principles. First, firepower superiority at the squad level, not the division level. Second, decentralized decision-making pushed down to sergeants and corporals. Third, aggressive initiative rewarded over cautious planning. British doctrine emphasized careful preparation and coordinated set-piece attacks. German doctrine emphasized tactical flexibility within a framework of officer leadership. American doctrine emphasized violent execution with minimal planning time. McNair's training manual stated, "The American infantryman does not wait for orders to exploit enemy weakness. He acts." This was drilled into every soldier during basic training. At Fort Benning, Georgia, rifle companies practiced a single exercise repeatedly: immediate assault upon contact. The standard British infantry manual devoted 42 pages to reconnaissance before attack. The American manual devoted 6 pages to reconnaissance and 38 pages to fire and movement during assault. German officers noticed this immediately. Generalmajor Gerhard Franz recorded his observations after fighting the American 1st Infantry Division in Tunisia. "They do not probe. They hit and hit again, and continue hitting until we withdraw or they die." But doctrine alone did not create fear. The Americans entered combat in North Africa in November 1942 with arrogance and inexperience. At Kasserine Pass in February 1943, they suffered a humiliating defeat. The German 5th Panzer Army, under Hans-Jürgen von Arnim, destroyed elements of the American 2nd Corps, inflicting 6,000 casualties and capturing 4,000 prisoners. German intelligence reports from Kasserine described American infantry as brave but poorly led, aggressive but tactically incompetent. The defeat should have confirmed German assumptions that American soldiers were soft, undisciplined, and unable to match European fighting quality. Instead, it triggered a transformation. General Dwight Eisenhower relieved the 2nd Corps commander and installed General George Patton on March 6, 1943. Patton implemented 3 changes within 72 hours. First, he removed every officer who had frozen under fire at Kasserine, regardless of rank or political connection. Second, he established immediate retraining programs, focusing on night combat and close assault. Third, he authorized squad leaders to bypass company commanders and call for artillery support directly. This third change was revolutionary. No other Allied army permitted enlisted men to direct artillery fire. But Patton recognized that American firepower superiority meant nothing if junior leaders could not access it immediately. Within 3 weeks, the same units that had retreated at Kasserine attacked German positions at El Guitar. On March 23, 1943, the American 1st Infantry Division assaulted the 10th Panzer Division near Gafsa. The German commander, General Lieutenant Wolfgang Fischer, expected a cautious, methodical attack, similar to British tactics at El Alamein. Instead, American rifle companies assaulted directly into German defensive positions under covering fire from their own squad automatic weapons. Fischer's after-action report stated, "The Americans we fought at Kasserine no longer exist. These men attack like SS formations, but with 10 times the artillery support. The Germans had taught the Americans how to fight. The Americans had learned faster than their teachers expected. Example 1. Morton, August 7, 1944. The German 7th Army launched Operation Lüttich, a desperate counterattack designed to cut off American forces that had broken through at Avranches. 4 panzer divisions, including the elite 2nd SS Panzer Division, Das Reich, attacked the American 30th Infantry Division near the town of Mortain. The Germans committed 75 tanks and 6,000 infantry. They expected to shatter the American line within 6 hours. The attack began at 0200 hours under cover of darkness and fog. By 0400 hours, German armor had penetrated 3 kilometers into American positions, and then they encountered the American 120th Infantry Regiment. The regimental commander, Colonel Hammond Burks, did not request permission to counterattack. He simply ordered every available rifle company to assault the German flanks simultaneously. American squad leaders called artillery fire directly onto their own positions to break up German infantry support. The engagement became a close-range nightmare of grenades, rifle fire, and hand-to-hand combat in the fog. By 0800 hours, the German advance had stopped completely. By noon, the 2nd SS Panzer Division was retreating, having lost 31 tanks and over 800 men. SS Obersturmbannführer Christian Tixen, commanding the 2nd SS Panzer, was killed by American rifle fire while attempting to reorganize his scattered companies. His replacement, SS Sturmbannführer Otto Baum, filed a report that reached Hitler's headquarters. The American infantry has become the most dangerous opponent we face. They do not defend. They counterattack immediately with all available weapons, regardless of odds. Example 2. Schmidt, November 2nd, 1944. The Hurtgen Forest represented the worst terrain American forces encountered in Europe. Dense woods, narrow trails, limited visibility, minimal armor support. These conditions should have favored German defensive tactics. The American 28th Infantry Division attacked toward the village of Schmidt, a critical road junction. The defending German forces belonged to the 275th Infantry Division, a second-rate formation with limited combat experience. German commanders expected an easy defense. American infantry could not use their firepower advantage in dense forest. American artillery could not see targets through the canopy. American logistics could not move supplies on muddy forest trails. The attack began on November 2nd at 0600 hours. Within 4 hours, American rifle companies had advanced 3 kilometers through supposedly impenetrable forest. They did not advance using British reconnaissance and consolidation tactics. They did not advance using German infiltration and exploitation tactics. They simply walked forward in squad formations, shooting everything that moved, calling artillery onto any resistance, and continuing to advance without pause. General Major Hans Schmidt, commanding the 275th Division, recorded his shock. They accept casualties that would cause any European formation to halt and reorganize. They lose 20 men and continue attacking with the remaining 80. They lose 50 men and continue attacking with the remaining 50. By November 4th, the Germans had abandoned Schmidt. They had inflicted over 2,000 casualties on the 28th Division. But they could not stop men who simply refused to stop moving forward. Example 3. Kesternik, January 31st, 1945. The village of Kesternik sat on the German border, a collection of stone buildings that had changed hands 6 times in 3 months. The German 344th Volksgrenadier Division held the position with approximately 800 men. The American 78th Infantry Division attacked with 2,000 men from the 309th Infantry Regiment. This should have been a standard set-piece assault. Artillery preparation, infantry advance, building-to-building clearance. Instead, the American commander, Colonel James Thompson, ordered an immediate assault without artillery preparation. His reasoning was captured in the regimental log. Artillery will destroy the buildings and create rubble we cannot cross. We will use squad weapons only. At 0700 hours on January 31st, American rifle companies entered Kesternich from 3 directions simultaneously. Each squad operated independently, clearing buildings with rifle fire, grenades, and satchel charges. No centralized command, no phased objectives, no consolidation pauses. Just 12-man squads fighting building to building with absolute autonomy. The German commander, Oberst Robert Thiemann, attempted to coordinate a defense from his headquarters in the village church. He could not. American squads moved too fast. They bypassed strong points instead of reducing them. They called artillery on individual buildings when resistance stiffened, then continued advancing before the smoke cleared. By 1400 hours, Kesternich belonged to the Americans. Thiemann's after-action report stated, "We did not fight a regiment. We fought 200 separate squads, each commanded by a sergeant who acted with the independence of a company commander." This was the American system at its peak. Not better training than the Germans, not better equipment than the British, but a philosophy that trusted corporals and sergeants to make battlefield decisions that other armies reserved for colonels. But this philosophy came with a terrible price. American infantry divisions suffered casualty rates that would have destroyed British or German formations. The American 4th Infantry Division lost over 200% of its original rifle company strength between D-Day and VE Day. This means every position was filled, emptied by death or wounds, and filled again twice. The average American rifle platoon that landed in Normandy had completely turned over its personnel 3 times by the end of the war. British infantry doctrine emphasized preservation of experienced soldiers. German infantry doctrine emphasized tactical withdrawal to prevent unnecessary casualties. American infantry doctrine emphasized mission accomplishment regardless of cost. The numbers reflect this brutal calculus. American infantry divisions in Europe suffered an average casualty rate of 112% from June 1944 to May 1945. British infantry divisions suffered an average casualty rate of 63%. German infantry divisions suffered an average casualty rate of 84%. The American replacement system was equally flawed. The U.S. Army treated infantry replacements as interchangeable parts, not as soldiers who needed integration into existing units. Replacements arrived at the front with minimal training, no connection to their new squads, and an average life expectancy of 17 days before death or wounding. A study conducted by the U.S. Army Historical Division found that 72% of American infantry casualties occurred among soldiers who had been with their units for less than 30 days. This was not a functional replacement system. This was an industrial conveyor belt, feeding men into a machine that destroyed them. Lieutenant Paul Fussell, who served in the 45th Infantry Division, wrote after the war, "We did not fight efficiently. We fought expensively. We purchased victory with the lives of 19-year-old riflemen from Ohio and Georgia and California." The American system created fear among German soldiers, but it created trauma among the Americans who survived it. Why did German soldiers fear American infantry more than British or other Allied troops? Not because Americans were better soldiers individually. German veterans consistently rated British infantry as more disciplined and better trained at the individual level. Not because Americans had superior equipment. German weapons like the MG-42 and Panzerfaust were more effective than their American equivalents. Germans feared American infantry because the Americans fought with the weight of an entire industrial nation behind every squad. A German platoon leader knew that destroying one American squad meant nothing. 2 more squads would arrive within hours, supported by artillery that never ran out of shells, carrying ammunition that never ran short, backed by a logistics system that never collapsed. British forces could win tactical engagements through skill and preparation. Soviet forces could win through mass and sacrifice. But American forces won through a combination that no European power could match: individual initiative, overwhelming firepower, and industrial capacity that treated material as infinite. The Germans could defeat American squads. They could defeat American companies. They sometimes defeated American battalions, but they could not defeat the American system, because the system did not depend on the survival of any individual unit. It simply replaced losses and continued advancing. This was not the European way of war, which valued preservation of veteran formations and careful husbanding of resources. This was industrial war, fought by a nation that measured success in yards gained and enemies killed, not in divisions preserved. A German staff officer captured in the Ardennes told his interrogators, "We do not fear the American soldier. We fear that there is always another American soldier behind him, and another behind that one, until we run out of ammunition, or men, or will." The character of American infantry reflected the character of the nation that created it: wasteful, pragmatic, indifferent to tradition, willing to sacrifice experienced soldiers to maintain offensive momentum, willing to replace tactical elegance with material superiority, willing to trade lives for time, because time favored the side with more factories. This made American infantry terrible to face, effective in execution, and traumatic for the men who served in it. The generals and colonels who designed this system went home to parades and promotions. The sergeants and privates who executed it went home with wounds that never fully healed. They came from dairy farms in Wisconsin and steel mills in Pennsylvania and cotton fields in Mississippi. Most had never left their home states before the war. They learned to kill in forests and villages whose names they could not pronounce. The American infantry in Europe included German immigrants who fought against their cousins, Japanese Americans from the 442nd Regiment who fought while their families sat in internment camps, and African American soldiers from segregated units who fought for a country that did not treat them as equal citizens. They were not professional soldiers. They were civilians in uniform who learned to function in a system that valued their willingness to move forward more than their likelihood of survival. Of the 2 million American infantrymen who served in Europe, approximately 600,000 were killed or wounded. As of 2024, fewer than 3,000 American World War II veterans remain alive. Within 5 years, none will remain. But the German veterans who faced them never forgot. In interviews conducted decades after the war, former Wehrmacht soldiers consistently described American infantry with the same words: relentless, overwhelming, and terrifying in their refusal to stop. They deserve to be remembered not as heroes in a simple story of good versus evil, but as young men who fought in a system that used them efficiently and discarded them quickly. They won their war, but the cost of that victory was measured in names on cemetery walls from Normandy to the Rhine. If this story matters to you, subscribe to this channel. New videos every day documenting the wars that shaped our world.